Minister, thank you so much for being with Bloomberg TV today at this very crucial moment for France. The French political turmoil has been hitting the bond market over the past few days, pushing French borrowing costs to the levels of Greece. How can you turn this around and reassure investors?
I'm glad to have you today. Let us be very clear. France is on the right track. France's economy has got very solid arguments, and it needs to be repeated. First of all, as you know, we expect a growth of 1.1% in 2034. It will be above the Eurozone average. Second, we have an inflation under the 2%, which is now stable. And third of all, needs to be said, we have an unemployment which is at its lowest in 40 years in France. So we have a strong economy, we have solid arguments. And last but not least, we have a clear perspective. Our government, Michel Barnier's government, has a clear commitment to reduce the deficit. It will be done. It needs to be done.
It needs to be done, but it's getting very difficult this week because obviously your government faces a possible motion of no confidence and could collapse as soon as this week. Michel Barnier, the Prime Minister, has already made some concessions, including on prices of electricity. What other concessions are you ready to make? Are you ready to tell us today in order for Marine Le Pen from the National Rally to abstain from a vote of no confidence?
You're right to remind that my Prime Minister, Michel Barnier, is a man of dialogue and compromise. And this government, in the last week, has clearly demonstrated its willingness to ensure that France could have a budget through evolution in the budget. And let me remind also that the parliamentary debate is still ongoing, and we have to wait until the end of this debate. But as you said, France is at a critical time. We have the arguments. We have the fundamentals. We have a perspective to reduce public spending and to cut borrowing, which is very important for France, but for Europe as well. So let's remind the political leaders in France that we have a common responsibility, and that this common responsibility includes voting, adopting, passing a budget.
Does that mean there's going to be more compromise, more concessions before Monday night, which is the deadline that Marine Le Pen has given you?
As I said, the French government doesn't take ultimatums. It's looking at the French parliamentary debate. It's respecting each and every parliamentary debate that leads to an evolution. We will take into account what is changing, but we won't be blackmailed. We are committed to reduce the deficit.
I understand you're willing to perhaps compromise, but Marine Le Pen has some specific concessions she wants from the government, including that all pensions be indexed on inflation as soon as January. And she also wants the government to give up this plan to abandon some drug reimbursement. On these two specific topics, is there any way to have more concessions from the government?
Let us not just focus on the Rassemblement National, because as you know...
but it's key.
It's key, but it's not enough. And as you say, for a vote of confidence to be adopted at the French Parliament, you would need to have the Socialist Party, the left parties, to vote with the far-right parties. So it would not only be the responsibility of Marine Le Pen's party, it would also be the responsibility of French socialists, French ecologists, people who are willing to oppose to Marine Le Pen, to vote together. It would be a very bad signal politically and economically for these countries, for our country, and for these parties who are saying and claiming that they could stay government parties.
Does that mean you're trying to negotiate with the Socialist Party, not the National Rally?
No, we are not focused on with whom we negotiate or not. As I said, the government is a government of dialogue, of respect, of co-construction. This budget has been co-constructed. It's not the result of just a government project. It's evolving within the days and the weeks of the parliamentary debate. We'll still be open, but not to blackmail.
You're not open to blackmail, but the thing that Marine Le Pen wants really is for the government to respect, that's what she says, to respect the electorate of the National Rally. Are you willing to say that the concessions you've already made, for example, are thanks to the National Rally and that you respect her electorate?
We respect each and every MP, and we respect each and every people in France, whatever they decided to vote or not to vote. Of course, But what's my responsibility as a finance minister is to commit to the 5% target that we decided to have at the beginning of our mandate. Not only for France or for the government, because it's now needed in order that Europe still remain a country, a continent of prosperity. That's what we aim at. And for that, we need all political leaders to be responsible.
With these concessions that we've seen in the budget, they're going to cost about 10 billion euros. Does that mean you can actually keep this 5% deficit target? Or do you believe perhaps it will be slightly higher, like 5.5 or perhaps higher?
As I told you, our commitment to reduce the budget deficit towards 5% in 2025 and towards 3% in 2029 is not an option. It is something we are very carefully looking at. What does that mean?
But can you actually fulfill this?
Yes, it means that at every time that we made adjustments on our budget, we compensated it with saving, with new measures. It's clearly an important point to underline here. We are committed to this 5% target in 2025.
Don't you think it's actually better to keep the deficit higher for longer rather than having government collapse this week?
That's not a way a finance minister of a great country like France can think and act. So I won't.
How do you think Brussels will react if there's more concessions in this budget?
First, let me underline that Brussels already reacted. Within 1 week, Standard & Poor's and the European Commission estimated that our plan, our medium-term plan and our budget for 2025 are credible. So that's a great asset to say and to underline here. We have independent institutes that are confident with our willingness and our projects to reduce deficit and cut borrowing.
But that was based on 60 billion euros of savings.
Yes, and as I told you, we will compensate every new measure we are taking because we are a responsible government committed with reducing the public deficit.
So you've already found some spending cuts on how to finance this extra 10 billion euros of concession?
But I don't know how you figure this these 10 billion euros.
Laurent Saint-Martin, the budget minister, has said that the weekend.
I don't think he said that because it's not what he said, and a lot of this 10 billion is already compensated in the budget, and that's not the target we are thinking at. The reality is that that's why we don't. How would I say that? That's the way we think is. As at every time where we can reduce the taxes, we do it. But we can't reduce the taxes without finding new cuts in public spendings, because we are a responsible government and we are looking at our public spending targets.
If the government does survive this week, do you actually have any guarantees from the National Rally that it will not back a vote of no confidence when you have to pass the overall budget the week before Christmas?
As I told you, we are focused with our objectives, with our goals to reduce deficits. And we are looking very carefully at all political responsibles, not only the Rassemblement National, but also the left parties in France. And we are telling them we have a budget. We have a medium path. It has been clearly validated by the European Commission, by Standard & Poor's and other agencies. So whatever you think about the government, whatever you think about the project we are having now, the idea is, do you want France to have a budget or no? And can you measure the consequences of having no budget? So we are clearly committed that everyone is taking his responsibility.
One quick question on rates. Michel Barnier said on Friday that France can no longer borrow money at what he calls reasonable rates. Currently, this rate on the 10-year bond is around 3%. What rate is unsustainable for France? Is it 3.5%? Is it higher than Italy? Is that unsustainable?
France's signature is solid, very solid. And French public finances are very well considered by the markets. As you could see in the last week, we have finished our financing plan for the year, and markets are looking at the strength of the French economy, which I recalled earlier. So let's not say that France is not sustainable. The French debt is of quite high quality, and our investments are secure.
So remaining at the level of Greece is sustainable?
We are not at the level of Greece. France is not Greece. Let me tell it to you again. Greece has done an incredible job after the crisis to reduce public spending. But France is not Greece. France's economy is not Greece's economy. France is solid, has great arguments, and will still have them in the coming years.
Final question. Longer term. We're talking about this week. There's a political turmoil. Let's think longer term. Given you have no majority, it's going to be difficult to pass some structural reforms over the next few months, even the next few years. How can you reassure investors longer term that, you know, a structural reform, there is still hope for a structural reform going forward, and that Germany and France can actually have together lasting reform in order to remain, you know, the drivers in Europe?
First, let me remind you that France has done the largest structural reforms in Europe for years. Retirement, unemployment, labour market, it's been structural changes that have been a success in France. And as you know, France is now the first country looking at attractiveness, at economic and financial attractiveness in Europe. So that's a success, and we will keep this success. And we will keep reforming France regarding the labour duration, regarding unemployment, as it has been decided in the last weeks in France to reduce again unemployment, and in other fields, in particular innovation and growth. Because the way Europe and France in particular can stay and keep its role in the world is to push both innovation and growth, as the Mario Draghi reports made it very clear. And France is committed to keep this European leadership with Germany, with Italy, with Spain, with all European countries, so that this growth agenda could be the best answer to the international and trade tension that are going on now.